many respects. But the thing is that most people in Wales feel like we've been sort of, how can I put it, sidelined. And what with everything happening in Westminster, surely some form of devolution throughout what is laughingly called the provinces, like Scotland and ourselves here, surely that would be a very, very good idea. And actually maybe strip these guys out from Westminster and actually have more self-determination. You're talking about self-determination.
Yeah. Okay. On that point, does there need to be an English Parliament?
Yes, I think what we need is for Westminster to sit for 1 week a month or so, where English MPs debate English-only issues, and during those periods of time, for the Welsh MPs to go back and deal with Welsh issues, and the Scottish MPs to go back and deal with Scottish issues. What we've actually done is to create layer after layer after layer.
But you believe in the continuation of the Union, do you?
I believe in the continuation of the Union, but I do actually believe in a big devolution of power from the centre, not just to Wales and Scotland, but I want Kent County Council and Devon County Council to actually take far more responsibility for what they do as well.
Thank you for your call so far. 0500 909 693. The leader of the UK Independence Party, Nigel Farage, is with us. Do you think Britain fundamentally is a Christian society?
Much less than it was 20 years ago, and that's not because of the number of people of other faiths that have come here. It's because we've basically lost our Christian core.
Have we?
Yeah, I think we have. In the main, we have, and I think sort of church attendance...
is that a bad thing? We've lost our Christian core?
I'm probably not the best person to speak on this as a very lapsed Christian, but yes, it probably is a bad thing.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do, but I'm a pretty lapsed, weak Christian.
But you think there is a higher spirit?
I think there probably is, yes.
Let's speak to Kevin in Chesterfield, Paul in Pulborough. Good morning, Paul. You go first.
Oh, good morning, Nicky, and good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Nigel, further to one of the callers earlier, my understanding is that when the EU was set up and Britain was actually didn't take up initial membership, General de Gaulle originally said that Britain should be bled white if she ever attempted to join the EU. I feel that that's likely to be the case that's happening now. If we are indeed paying £40 million a day to belong to this club, and if we are massive net importers from the EU, can you actually give me any points that it's to our benefit to continue to belong to...
Well,
there's a tough question.
I'm afraid you've got the wrong bloke here, really.
Yeah.
Look. I mean, actually,
how on earth are you going to handle that one?
What de Gaulle did do was de Gaulle did say that Britain, because of her relationship across the world with the English-speaking nations, was too different to enter into a political union. And I think de Gaulle was absolutely right about that. Look, what we're doing is we're paying a very great deal of money into an organisation whose accounts have not been signed off by the auditors for the last 14 years in a row, who now make 75% of the laws that are made in this country, many of which put massive added cost onto our business or damage our traditions.
Did you always hate it? Did you always hate the idea of it?
No, not completely, but I think what really convinced me that it was mad was when I worked in the City of London and I realised that what the UK was really good at was being a global trader. You know, of course doing business with Europe's important, but doing business with the rest of the world is important. And it was the day that the Major as Chancellor signed us up to the exchange rate mechanism in 1990, and I've campaigned against it ever since. The real point is we don't need pull. We don't need to be part of a political union in order to do business with French and German companies.
OK, thank you for that. Of course, something you referred to on the Andrew Marr, or you wanted the point on the Andrew Marr programme yesterday, that your party had been accused of being very right-wing, full of sort of grumpy old golf club types, and you're trying to disavail the party of that image, aren't you?
I think we had suffered a bit from that, but I think...
That doesn't mean I'm going to ask you what's on your iPod, but you know what I mean.
Look, I think we had suffered a bit with that, but I mean, I made the point earlier to one of your callers, and then there was somebody read out earlier, there was a text came in saying, aren't you xenophobic? Look, we've got Marta Andreasen standing for us, the former EU chief accountant who's a Spanish citizen. We've got 5 black and Asian candidates standing for us, you know, on these national
a diverse
lists.
Party.
We've got a 19-year-old student standing for us in East Anglia, a 22-year-old young businessman standing for us in the South East, plus we've got people right through into their 70s that are standing for us. We now represent a real cross-section of the British population. 5 years ago, I have to admit, we didn't.
Kevin in Sheffield.
Oh, good morning. I'd like to ask, it's basically a multi-part question relating to the same thing. If, on the off chance you are successful and remove us from the EU, what do you propose to do about EU nationals living and working in this country at that time? The other part of it is, I own property within the EU. How would that affect me? The third part is, although I disagree with a great deal of what you're saying, I would not choose to be merely a British subject. I would probably elect to become an EU citizen. What would my status be under your policies?
Well, look, let me be honest with you. If your view is the majority view, that we should be EU citizens and we should not be British and not be living in an independent state, I don't want that to be the case, but I'm quite prepared to accept that being the case, provided that this is decided in a free and a fair referendum in this country. And part of the whole object of the European election campaign we're fighting now, one of the reasons that we want to get a massive vote to really shake Westminster to its foundations is I don't think these fundamental decisions should be taken by career politicians on three-line whips in the House of Commons. So I'd love to have this debate with you very publicly at some point in the next couple of years when the British people have a referendum to decide their future. And that, to me, is what this is all about. You know, I mean, there are lots of people out there who did vote back in 1975 in the referendum, but they have to be 52 years of age or over. But there are millions out there who voted yes in 1975, but thought they were voting for a free trade deal and not for political union.
What about the status of European nationals living and working?
Now that was the first part of the question. Look, what we want to do is we want to operate a proper work permit scheme. I don't see anything objectionable or difficult about that whatsoever, but I do think that, you see, when in the EU we had countries like France and Germany and Italy and Belgium and Britain, because we were all relatively at the same level of wealth, I mean, give or take a little bit, we didn't notice that there were massive transfers of people from one area to another. I was one of only 3 British MEPs that voted against enlargement to the east with open borders because it seemed obvious to me that if you have poor countries that join a union and unlimited access, that it would lead to a massive migratory flow.
May I make a point?
Of course.
In the 70s, when we had a referendum, that was a constitutional anomaly. There has been no precedence for it, no precedence since for such a thing as a referendum in this country. The power, legitimisation in this country, is devolved from the Crown through to Parliament, not back upwards from the people. So therefore, where you're coming from is particularly erroneous in this argument. The thing is, you're not even addressing any of the positive points of Europe. Many people in this country have interest within Europe other than your narrow views and your narrow interests. Well, I have property and I'm just an ordinary citizen. Lots of other people have property.
Where's your property?
Well, it's in Bulgaria.
Nice. I mean, it's kind of quite relatively cheap there, isn't it? Yeah.
It's relatively cheap, yes, but that's for now.
I mean, you know, your point about the referendum, look, I have lost all faith in the Westminster political class, and I think perhaps millions of others have lost faith in them too. I do not trust them to make big decisions on behalf of me that will affect my children and grandchildren. I want us to make those decisions, and therefore I believe that a referendum is the best way of doing it.
So you choose to live in a republic rather than a parliamentary democracy?
I would much rather live in a country where the British people can determine their own future and not have it done for them by minority governments in Westminster whipping through their MPs.
Kevin, thank you very much indeed. Good morning to Barbara in Northern Ireland, somewhere, I know not where, Barbara. Where are you exactly?
Well, it doesn't really matter, but it's just outside Belfast. No, I was intrigued by the fact that when Nigel Farage was talking about where he was standing, did not include Northern Ireland.
No, you're right. We did consider standing in Northern Ireland. However, there is a Northern Irish MEP by the name, I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention his name, I suppose I am, by the name of Jim Allister, who was a QC before going into politics, who has served 1 term in the European Parliament, and quite honestly, we've linked arms with Jim on virtually every single issue. In my view, he's a splendid representative for Northern Ireland, and so what I've done, in the case of Northern Ireland, I've given my personal endorsement to say to people, if they want somebody who will battle for the sovereignty of the UK, he's the man to vote for.
Thank you.